Stop for a moment and notice the next thought that claims your attention. It insists on urgency, yet 2 seconds ago it did not exist and 2 seconds from now it will dissolve. Everything you call my problem shares that same vaporous lifespan. What persists, silently registering these comings and goings, is you as awareness. Recognize this and the mind's parade of private crises shrinks to a single label, temporary weather over an unchanging sky. A mind state is no different from a gust of wind. It stirs, rattles a few branches of memory, then subsides of its own accord. The personal label we slap on it is what turns a passing ripple into a private storm. Drop the label and the event loses its ownership. It is simply movement within consciousness, as neutral as clouds shifting across the sun. Even the sense of a separate me who claims to experience these shifts is itself a fleeting pattern, watched from a depth that never stirs. Stay with that depth. Let every sensation, plan, or opinion appear without commentary. Seen in this light, the mind ceases to be an adversary and reverts to what it has always been, transient weather over an untouchable stillness. Test a quieter reading of the same moment. Notice the pulse rising, the script forming, yet decline to name it mine. At once the charge lessens. Sensations still surge, but they lack a storyteller to anchor them. Without that anchor, the episode reveals its temporary nature, tense, dynamic, already altering. What you are does not tense or relax, it registers both without entanglement. Even the sense of I that claims to monitor the show is another ripple, observed from a background too subtle to be captured. That background never reports agitation or calm, it simply shines, allowing both. Return attention to that silent field whenever the mind asserts ownership. Each return strips a thread from the knot of ego, until thoughts, emotions, and the presuming me stand alike as phenomena, brief patterns in a sky that has never once been disturbed by passing weather. Every emotional spike brings a thought that explains or justifies it. Anger arrives with the sentence that someone wronged you. Shame rises together with a memory cataloging your faults. Excitement appears alongside images of future admiration. Feeling and narrative travel as a single packet. If you catch one, you have met the other. The moment a sensation announces itself, look for the sentence that rides with it. Name them as one unit: anxiety prediction, anger blame, pride image. Nothing more is required. Recognition itself is the intervention. Analysis, comfort, or argument would only weave fresh threads inside the same bundle. By meeting the pair with straightforward naming, awareness confirms its position outside the traffic. The story loses the implicit permission to develop, and the emotion, deprived of mental rehearsal, completes its natural arc and dissolves. A second episode may appear minutes later, but the procedure is the same. Note the combined package, allow it to pass, remain unencumbered. Repeated practice shortens the delay between onset and recognition. In time, the automatic link weakens, a wave of feeling starts to rise, the usual story tries to form, and both fade before gaining momentum. What remains is a clear field in which practical thought can operate when needed, yet no surplus narrative lingers to burden the next moment. A mind state is persuasive only if it gains a user. The urge is to sign in by adding one silent sentence: "This is happening to me." That single assumption turns a passing current into a personal biography and obliges you to respond, defend, justify, plan, regret. Without that sentence, the same current is no more personal than wind crossing an open field. When the impulse to personalize appears, meet it with a simple stance: I will not register. Feel the lure of commentary, note its content, then leave it unread. No counterargument is necessary, declining the invitation is enough. The sensation may continue for a while, but it does so without access to the resources of identification and therefore cannot develop a plot. Daily activity remains functional. You remember appointments, honor commitments, speak when information is required. None of this demands psychological ownership. Practical memory and immediate attention handle each task. What is absent is the running narrator that turns tasks into evidence for or against an imagined self. At first the refusal feels like restraint, as though an important authority has been muted. Soon it becomes relief, background noise has stopped, and usable energy returns. Over time the boundary between awareness and thought grows firm. Stray narratives bounce off like rain on a roof. The mind still generates weather, but the house stays dry. This is not withdrawal from life. It is participation without surplus identity. Speech becomes concise, decisions straightforward, relationships lighter. Events register, leave factual traces, and move on. Nothing piles up into an ongoing story of me. The machinery of ego cannot run without the fuel of continual logging in. Once that fuel is withheld, the engine slows, sputters, and falls silent on its own. Ego grows through two moves. First, it treats mental activity as private property. Second, it advertises that property as who I am. Each time either move succeeds, identity thickens. Freedom depends on interrupting both. Step 1 is factual recognition. Thoughts, moods, and body sensations occur inside a universal field, not inside an individual owner. They have the same status as sounds in the street, they happen, they finish. Claiming them adds nothing to their function and subtracts clarity from the field. Step 2 is practical discipline. Wherever the habit of ownership appears, my worry, my inspiration, my setback, replace the possessive stance with a factual description. Worry exists, inspiration exists, setback exists. The substitution removes the personal label without suppressing the experience. Clarity remains, activity continues, but ego gains no substance from it. Results are cumulative. Mental traffic loses its emotional surcharge, communication turns simple, and memory stores only useful data instead of self-flattering or self-wounding stories. None of this requires special states, it follows from a single, consistent refusal to attach the word "my" to transient events. Impersonality does not cancel responsibility. Work still gets done, relationships receive attention, creative projects advance. What drops away is the psychological surplus, the inner recital about being admired, misunderstood, ahead, or behind. Without that recital, life operates with less drag and more precision. Maintain the line, no private possession of thought, feeling, or circumstance. The mind will test the boundary, let the tests come and go without commentary. Over time the boundary hardens into a natural fact, like the horizon dividing land and sky. On one side, unknown phenomena rise and fade, on the other, awareness stands free, unconfused, and fully available for whatever needs doing next. No training unfolds on a frictionless path. Old reflexes can resurface, sometimes abruptly, and declare, "This is me again." The moment you notice their return, resist the urge to brand the setback as failure. Treat it as routine maintenance. First, confirm the landscape. A burst of identification has appeared, that is all. It does not cancel yesterday's understanding, nor does it signal that the mind is regaining permanent control. It is simply another passing episode, observed in the same field where every other episode has come and gone. Second, shorten the recovery cycle. Instead of analyzing why the old pattern re-emerged, redirect attention to the impersonal fact of awareness itself. Like resetting a compass, this move restores orientation without storytelling. The longer you stay in analysis, the longer the pattern lingers, the quicker you re-establish neutrality, the faster it dissolves. Third, resume ordinary activity without self-critique. Carry on with the email, the meal preparation, or the conversation that was underway. Integration happens through continuity, not through dramatic course corrections. By moving forward without the extra weight of judgment, you teach the nervous system that impersonality is the normal setting, not a special achievement. Finally, register the lesson in silence. Each relapse and recovery confirms the same truth: what you are cannot become the disturbance it sees. Repeated evidence strengthens confidence, and confidence shortens future recoveries even more. Over time, the return of ego noise resembles a brief change in weather rather than a personal drama. With these points absorbed, setbacks convert into proof of stability rather than signs of regression. The practice matures from episodic effort into effortless hygiene, like breathing or blinking. Ego storms may revisit, but their clouds remain thin, their rain brief, and the clear sky of awareness, the sky that needs no defense, continues untouched. What feels like progress is simply the mind losing its monopoly on your attention. Recognize this baseline frequently as the unspoken core around which daily life turns. Maintain respect for that core. Whenever thought invites you to measure success or failure, remind yourself that awareness cannot be graded. It either goes unnoticed or it doesn't. Allow this fact to undercut the urge to keep score. Doing so protects you from the subtle pride of attaining and the equally subtle shame of backsliding. Treat peace as ordinary. When you sit, walk, send a message, or wash a dish, let the action proceed without background commentary. Silence that feels unremarkable is more trustworthy than silence that feels dramatic, because it requires no special conditions. The mind will still propose side stories. Let them appear without giving them a stage. Give the body room to settle. Proper sleep, movement, and uncluttered nutrition reduce physiological noise, making it easier to notice when identity tries to harden again. This is simple housekeeping that keeps the doorway to awareness unobstructed. Freedom from ego is the timeless fact that underlies every moment, regardless of mood or circumstance. By returning to that fact again and again, you confirm its reality and lose interest in distractions that once felt urgent. With this confirmation in place, awareness stands on its own, silent and self-evident, and life moves within it as naturally as clouds pass across a clear sky. Consider how attention used to circle a single reference point, me. Every impression was compared against that axis, judged as gain or loss. The shift we are exploring removes that private center. Experience still unfolds, yet it no longer bends around an owner. Sound, color, temperature, decision, each registers in the field, then moves on without being stored in a personal ledger. Function remains sharp. You can hold a conversation, repair a hinge, or draft a report, but the labor is lighter because no hidden commentator weighs each move. Activity feels closer to play, fully engaged, yet free of the tension that comes from defending an image. Even conflict illustrates the change. Suppose a harsh remark lands. Instead of ricocheting inside a defensive shell, the words pass through open space. If a practical response is needed, it comes cleanly, untainted by resentment. If no response is useful, silence closes the episode. What used to be a bruise now registers as fleeting pressure. This style of living is neither detached nor indifferent, it is intimate without possession. Landscapes, music, companionship, everything is tasted more vividly because no inner narrator interrupts with comparisons or commentary. Paradoxically, letting go of ownership allows appreciation to deepen. When old patterns attempt to reassert themselves, meet them with curiosity rather than resistance. A story gains power only when you step inside it. Recognizing the outline from the outside dissolves its influence. The good news is that each recognition strengthens the ease of the next one. The mind's momentum typically gains strength in the first seconds after an unexamined thought appears. Once the snowball starts rolling, each added association enlarges the mass, and soon the original impulse is hidden under layers of narrative. Freedom depends on catching the beginning before the build-up. Detection works by recalling a simple fact: any personal flavor signals entrance into the same basket described earlier. A tone of urgency, a familiar tightening behind the eyes, a mental rehearsal of explanations, each marks the threshold. The moment one of those cues is noticed, label the whole cluster, mind state, and decline further elaboration. No investigation into causes, no construction of counterarguments. One decisive recognition cuts the chain. This refusal does not suppress thought, it redirects energy to uncolored awareness. Having lost the fuel of identification, the mental surge fades on its own. What remains is clarity, available for whatever objective step the situation requires. The cycle ends before it truly begins, and the landscape stays unscarred. Regularly interrupting the pattern in this way re-educates the nervous system. Over time, the interval between stimulus and recognition shortens until the mind's habitual waves resemble brief ripples on a wide pond. Each interrupted cycle confirms a quieter baseline and demonstrates, through lived evidence, that non-involvement carries no cost and much relief. Early recognition breaks the chain, but freedom matures when neutrality becomes second nature. That stability grows from three concurrent strands. Remember the baseline more often than the fluctuations. Give silent attention to ordinary moments. Each time the mind is quiet, register the absence of struggle. Keep identity statements factual and transient. Restrict language to what can be verified now, and the mind loses its favorite medium, exaggeration. Precision conserves energy for genuine tasks. Anchor the body without dramatizing its signals. A pulse quickens, note it. Shoulders tense, adjust posture. The observation stops there. Physical cues return to being information rather than evidence for a psychological story. Sensation and narrative part company, leaving neither repressed nor inflated. When these strands weave together, non-involvement ceases to feel like an effort. Attention rests at its source by default and moves outward only when a specific function calls for it. Activity continues, but none of it claims a permanent position in consciousness. Memory stores what is useful and discards the rest without commentary. In this climate, the so-called ego finds no continuous foothold. It may appear in a sudden opinion or a burst of self-importance, yet the very appearance exposes its impermanence. Recognition cuts the fuel line, and the episode dissolves before momentum builds. Stability is a flexible center that adjusts to circumstances while leaving self-image untouched. From here, Events resemble weather patterns passing over a steady landscape. Wind may bend the grass, rain may soak the soil, but the ground itself remains unmoved and available, ready for the next clear action, or none at all.